First and foremost, thank you so much for your patience. We're about 10 minutes in, but yeah, today it's an exclusive talk with Juan O Savin. Before I bring him on, I know some of you guys probably have questions for him. Make sure you do write your questions in capital letters. Now, I also want to make sure that my mic is working on my end. It shows that it is, so if I can get a thumbs up, then give me a thumbs up. If you guys could hear me loud and clear, everything's fine. Okay, I'll back up. I noticed that last time I was too close to the mic and it sounded kind of not good. So I'm going to go ahead and just introduce myself for those that are new. Greetings. For those that don't know who I am the author of Our Cosmic Origin and, of course, The Secret Government. And these works explore the veiled truths and complex interconnections behind everything that's been going on, the hidden rulers, and of course, our true cosmic beginnings. Now, I hope you guys are having a beautiful day today on the 15th of June. Happy Father's Day for all the fathers out there. And on this very day, 2015, in 1215, my bad, in 1215, the Magna Carta sealed by King John. It was a charter of English liberties that occupied a unique place in the popular imagination as a symbol and a battle cry against oppression. Was sealed on this very day in the year 1215, June 15, under threat of civil war by King John in that very year. Now, two more fun facts about myself. Things that nobody really knows about is that I used to smoke as a teenager for a few years, and ever since I stopped or I quit smoking cigarettes, for whatever reason, I cannot stand secondhand smoke. So every time I'm around somebody that smokes, I have to either get away, shut my door, and just move to a place or an area where I can't smell it anymore, because it really just, I don't like the pollution. Another thing about myself is that for those that didn't know, is that I am very, very, very patient. You know, it takes a lot to aggravate me. Or actually, I don't even get aggravated. I don't really react to things anymore. Nothing really faces me, you know, things. There's people out there who talk bad about me and I could care less. You know, their perspective of me doesn't affect me. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm capable of. And I know the positive effect that I've had on the world. So I am just, you know, I'm like a strong fortified tree. No wind, no hurricane can ever knock me down. So yeah, I'm very, very secure and very grounded in who I am. And those are two more fun facts about myself. Now, as an upcoming reminder that I will be doing a Starseed conference on the 7th of July in San Diego. For those that are interested in attending this event, go to my website, ourcosmicorigin.com. To access the tickets. That way I could get credit for that. Now, I want to also welcome all of you to my channel. If you are new or just popping in for the first time, please hit the subscribe button. It helps this channel grow. And most importantly, guys, I want to extend deep gratitude and appreciation to everyone out there. Thank you so much for tuning in and for watching my channel. And if you could also share this live stream with other people, it'll actually help grow my channel. So thank you so much, guys. Now let's bring in Juan O Savin. I actually have some questions myself for Juan O Savin. He's been a very important element in the disclosure and the revealing of the truth of what's going on with within the battle between the Cabal and the White Hat. So with no further ado, let's welcome Juan O Savin. First time to my channel.
Hey, beautiful to get a chance to talk with you and your listeners. And, you know, it's kind of interesting the way that we met. Mel Carmen, I had sent him a note because I had expected I was going to get to meet you down at the event down in Florida. And I apologize to those folks. I had warned listeners on Mel's channel, and I'd warned Mel in advance that we had something that was occurring right in that zone that could make it impossible for me to be there. And in fact, of course, it happened. So I was unable to be out in Florida. You and I would have met there. And then I had just sent him a note because one of my texts had said that there was stuff that was passing around in the internet, some channel or something purported to be your channel, but putting some stuff out that supposedly I said that I didn't say, that was AI generated. And so I just asked Mel if he could check with you on that. And of course, we figured out that no, this was one of many of these AI operations with supposedly thousands of people viewing, saying stuff that I never said. And then it was posted as though it was you. So I was glad that we got a chance to clear that up. And we all know we're being attacked on this stuff, and it's BS. We're already talking about stuff that is pretty edgy or different a lot of times, and then to have this mischief occurring that clouds everything and makes it, so hard to have a coherent, intelligent conversation out into the public because somebody's trying to twist it in the background. So being able to get to do a direct interview between us, have some fun, and directly to your listeners where there's no question, it's you and me talking, is a great treat. And we meet under unusual circumstances. Sometimes those are the very best meetings. So I really appreciate the chance to talk to you and your listeners, Ismail.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, and I did meet you via texting through Mel Carmine. I've always considered Mel Carmine the connecting everybody together. We all have a role to play in this great awakening. Now, I did notice that you have a beautiful view out there. Are you like somewhere in Alaska, the Arctic, or even Antarctica? Where are you at? That's beautiful.
No, I was in Antarctica for early part of the year for a bit, and I'm up in Alaska right now.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
and some of the most spectacular scenery in the world. And amazingly, I've kayaked all through here in the years past. It's pretty wild. You have to be careful if the glacier's calving because you can get a pretty good wave here or there. And but it sure is fun. And I've been all through some of these areas in this region. In fact, I'd like to do something. I haven't talked about it publicly, but I have one of my boats that I'd like to break a friend of mine's record between Seattle and Ketchikan and it was set back in the mid 80s. And so we're going to go through some of those waters over the next few days. And I want to come back through and do a run, not at speed. And this exact time of the year, I'd wanted to do it this year even, but obviously decided that this wasn't the year to be doing that stuff. So maybe next year this time or the following year when things calm down, I'll go do that and see if we can beat the record.
Sweet. Now, since we are in a very pivotal moment in the history of our world, seems like a lot of things are happening right now, man. A lot of things are about to happen. Things are going to be shifting on a great scale. I do have some questions that I would love to get your perspective on.
And I that's what's fun is that I had several people, just so you know, oh, you got to be careful. It's going to be all weird and whatever. That's some of the best stuff comes because we have a discussion where we see something differently, and now we have a conversation. And a lot of times we'll find out we actually are pretty close to the same thing, but it's just little nuances, smaller stuff. But in the whole, we probably agree in large measure on most of the big stuff, and then it's the nuances, the minutia, and that's the fun stuff for conversation. And the one thing I would say out into the audience here, when we stop being able to converse on stuff where we have differences of opinion, that's when we really are in trouble. And if somebody's not just being stupid and dumbass and just trying to be contentious, if we're having honest conversations about stuff, even the reason I mentioned I had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and we really disagreed on something major. But over the course of time, we were able to figure out what it was the nut and work through it. And all of a sudden, we just were using words that meant different things. And I had to kind of refine it down to, but this word means this exact thing. What you're saying isn't the right understanding of that word. I literally got a couple of different dictionaries and looked at it, and then came to the point where, in this particular case, it could have been me that would have been wrong, but in this particular case, we looked at the definition and finally got to where he was like, okay, I get that one word that I'm using says something different than what I'm saying. And once we understood that it was a semantics issue. The reality is we were, probably 99% instead of 90% in agreement. And so having a conversation can be so crucial to even the saving of the country and understanding things. The guys that founded the country, the people that wrote the Constitution, they were, avid readers. And if we look at the works that they read and then their conversations about it, in the beer halls at the time, we realized that it was through conversation they came up with and refined all the various things that became the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and other documents that the country's founded around. So let's have at it. I'm glad to do it. And again, I say, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, Juan. My pleasure. Now, your name itself, in Spanish, Juan is John, right?
Juan, yes.
And then O Savin. When you think of O Savin, with I'm going to speak in code here. You think of the 17th letter of the alphabet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Military operations. You know which letter I'm talking about.
Yep.
Is there any? I mean, obviously, there is no coincidences. Like, there's a reason why you call yourself that, right?
Well, there's a history there that I don't really get into precisely, that I think people will understand it somewhere down the road. And
it's fine. We don't have to get into any
with
history
with the work that I did. There's
Right.
there's a really fun understanding of how that came about, and somewhere I will probably share more privately. I've shared it with a handful of folks, but we'll save it for a later point in time.
Right.
But there is a meaning to it. Yeah, there's and it's what's. Let me just say this. In the matrix of things, what's so stunning to me is that without even knowing it, when I look back over my life, there were several little things that happened that you could only look back over time and realize, well, that was so integral. Who could have anticipated this one little thing? And then later it means this and this and this, that at the time seemed so insignificant, so negligible, that only God himself could have painted that picture, could have put those threads in there in this matrix of reality. And it's almost like he laughs that those things were there. And you look back later in life, oh my gosh, how could have all those things, all that thread come through time like that? And it's like it's just, an artist's brush where time doesn't matter, that can paint things in and make it all make sense.
All right. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask pertains to what's circulating in social media right now. Some people are fearing. It's been on Fox News. And then during a recent interview, you've kind of mentioned something about this. So I want you to elaborate on this. This was an interview done with my buddy David Nino Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some sort of anticipating nuclear scare event with the current situation involving nuclear sirens, military computers, and the activation of the emergency alert system. Okay, so what developments can we expect regarding the presence of Russian warships and a nuclear submarine off the coast of Florida as we approach the 10 days of darkness?
Well, gosh, there's a lot to unravel there. So let's just try to pick it away at it, because this is important for people. First off, what we're coming up on is not Armageddon. It's not the end of the world.
I agree. Yeah.
We're not in the great tribulation. Is that coming? Yeah, it's out there, but this isn't that. And you don't have to be Nostradamus. You don't have to be Kim Clement to see where things in the world are going right now. Um, I'm probably fairly well known for having said that before this is over. I said about 10 years ago that this would be like the Cuban Missile Crisis as this situation escalates. And what I was referring to was the deterioration in our relations with Russia. And at that time, this is before Trump, well before Trump, I was trying to explain to people that what was happening was that we had authorized these labs inside Ukraine that were doing biological weapons research, targeted genetics to attack certain genetic lines, certain families. And as time went on, those bioweapons research labs, 54 of them, were actually testing bioweapons on people of Slavic origin. In the Ukraine population, you have a lot of people with, guys with Russian wives, uh, women with Russian husbands, because that whole area was kind of a mix of everything. Well, the long and short of it is that these weapons were being tested on Ukrainian soldiers who had lineage with people back into Russia and with various sicknesses. And Putin himself had railed against this and had even spoken about it in the UN. Now, this is a decade ago. You got to think about this. This has been building there for a long time. At the same time, World Economic Forum was in there in the Ukraine, and they were spending $1 billion a year trying to foment the creation of an orange revolution, a political revolution inside Ukraine to set up a war like what we now have between these Nazis, if you will, these Eastern or these Western Ukrainian groups that love to have all the Nazi swastikas and everything else over their body, trying to overthrow the government of Ukraine and begin a war with Russia. That's a decade ago. Right. And it continued to escalate all the time. With $1 billion in funding, you can see how it was maturing over time and becoming more and more and more advanced. And by the way, just for people in this audience, remember this. You had people out of Ukrainian intelligence operations, Ukrainian intelligence operatives who were present, and I won't say the things, I don't want to get us knocked off of YouTube, at the event that happened when we were counting votes for who was going to be president in DC. And so you look at the audience and you had people from Ukraine at that event masquerading as American citizens and doing what they're doing. A very, very, very serious situation. Somebody was trying to do a version of an orange revolution to get something done in America to cause disruption or revolution in America. So with that in mind, we then come back to our relationship out into the world. What's going on with America? Somebody wants us to get back into the Cold War and has been very successful in doing that. Lavrov, who is a neighbor of one of my friends there in Russia, inside the presidential compound, the Russian foreign minister, I had been saying it's going to be like the
one of your friends.
Yeah, I had said it was going to be like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah. Before this is over, it's going to be the Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. Well, a half a year before Russia invaded Ukraine, Lavrov came out and used those exact words. It's the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again. It's the Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. Right. Now we have headlines using that exact terminology again popping up here in America all over the place. Was I seeing the future like a seer? Did I have some vision or divine perspective? No, I had been through a lot of what had gone on in the work that I did that brought down the Soviet Union. We won World War III. Soviet Union doesn't exist.
Right.
We're in World War IV right now. But you didn't have to be Nostradamus.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to be some unbelievable genius. You just had to see what was going on to realize that these people were pushing a position that was going to force Putin or whoever was the leader to, rear up and protect themselves. And if they're going to be challenged on their border in Ukraine and into Crimea, they're going to come back and do exactly what was done back in the 60s. They were going to challenge right off our shore, where they have a beachhead at Cuba. It couldn't be more obvious. And I think, so in other words, I'm not trying to claim some, super, telepathic powers of enlightenment or something like that. This was obvious. And everybody knew it. And I may have articulated it earlier, but with that in mind, a lot of your audience see things, they anticipate things, but they're using a mental calculation. They're doing the gymnastics. We don't have to be rocket scientists to figure out the consequences of what is happening out into the political world, the military world, etc. And we are being methodically marched to war right now, and the whole country feels it, sees it. And in Ukraine, the number of deaths that have occurred already, just one second, let me just finish with one point. The number of deaths that have occurred already are far greater than if you had blown up a tactical nuclear weapon there, or several. We've already suffered the effects. People are worried about a nuke, which is the other thing I talked about that would lead to some kind of an event. You've already had more people die than died at Hiroshima and Nagasaki together, and more injured with all what's already happened in Ukraine. This is something beyond comprehension if you get right down to it, and it's in the heart of Europe. It's in Central Europe. Will this escalate into Europe and NATO have to respond, and we're the biggest partner in NATO? It's a very horrid situation.
Right. So would you say that this Russian warship is actually something that will, in a way, activate the emergency alert system that will allow the white hat military to do their thing? Could that be the case?
Well, let me just throw a couple things out there. We've talked about it in the months past. Russia has their nuclear submarine that was just recently built. It's one of the largest vessels of its type in the world, if not the largest. But it's equipped with torpedoes that are nuclear powered. I believe it can hold 8 of them. And what's unique about these nuclear powered torpedoes is they have a range of 25,000 miles. In other words, they can fire them off in the waters in Russia, in the Northern Sea there. They can fire them off. These torpedoes go autonomously without anybody driving them. They follow an internal guidance mapping system. And they can go anywhere in the world up to 25,000 miles away or more, all nuclear powered. When they get there or anywhere along the way, the torpedo can depower, sit at some preset depth, sit on the ocean floor at some preset location. They can dive deeper than manned submarines do because the requirements physically, as far as building this tube that can go to much greater depths, means that where we're watching with very, very sophisticated towed arrays behind our nuclear subs and with our SOSA systems, which are underwater microphones that are spread all over the world, literally thousands and thousands, monitoring movements of ships and submarines. These torpedoes go far deeper in the water than we normally look for. And so they literally can go right underneath some of our detection systems. And once they're lost, they're very hard, if not impossible, with the current technology to find again. So they've already launched, done a sortie where they fired out, we believe, 8 of those torpedoes into the world. They can be parked anywhere on the shores of the U.S. from various places. And they claim, now this isn't my claim, they claim that they can use underwater features such as an island, a underwater shelf, etc. And when they explode them, they can create a shape charge type wave, which means that because the explosion ricochets off, say, an underwater wall, it causes all the water not just to go straight up in the air like it normally would, but to bounce off that wall and create a tsunami coming inland into the shore. And so they claim that, like in a inlet area or a river inlet or something like that, where the beach tends to focus away from as it comes in, they can send a wave that might go in some significant distance and damage, everything, not just the explosion, the heat from a nuclear explosion or something like that, but actually a waveform. They go in and they take out a city like, New York, Long Beach, with all the shipping, Seattle, Connecticut, with the shipbuilders, some place like that. And you're not going to see it coming. They detonate it, and the next thing you know, we're in deep kimchi. They could damage. You think that bridge in Baltimore was a big deal. Imagine a few nukes going off close to home. Now, they
are you aware that there is some sort of a rule that there will be no nuclear weapons or no nuclear war? That a lot of the nuclear plants have been shut down by Earth Alliance and connections to positive extraterrestrial forces. Now, the reason where I'm getting at is that, according to the intel coming from Valiant Door, who has been working with the positive military, the Russian submarine in Turkey is not armed with active nuclear weapons. So it's not armed. They're just trying to scare people. Okay, as these would be deactivated, obviously, if they were by UFO upon deployment. Now, in light of this, what do you believe is the underlying purpose of orchestrating a nuclear scare event? Is this an event that is being done by the good guys in order to activate the positive military and dismantle the cabal worldwide? What do you have to say about that?
Well, okay, let's kind of just go through this step by step, and it's not a conversation I normally have with most of the hosts, but they're also not that deep into some of this minutia. So let's kind of discuss it for a minute and see if we can break it down a bit. For example, there is questions about whether or not you can even detonate a nuke outside of certain physics with certain alignments of the planet and sun, things like that. There's another theory that actually I think has some possible validation. For example, when we were doing all the nuclear tests back in the 50s and early 60s, that became the basis for the test ban treaty, that we were seeing action on the surface of the sun with sunspots. Now, in normal physics, it would not be possible with electromagnetic anything, pulses, etc., of the infinitesimal nature of the biggest nuclear bomb you can imagine to have an effect on the sun. The other side of the coin is, in the other physics, that's not actually true. And there was questions, is there in fact something happening beyond the normal electromagnetic physics, photonic physics that we operate in, that we don't understand, that is having an effect in great distance, that is triggering things on the surface of the sun and in the physical realm that we don't fully understand yet. And
Right.
so
Agree with
that's a
that.
fun, interesting conversation.
Mhm.
I'm one of the few people that probably actually gets it on the physics and have looked at that pretty extensively. Um, but now let's go to some of the other stuff that you're discussing. Uh, and I've tried to avoid these conversations for the most part for this reason. Most of the public are just not equipped um, to go into Galactic Alliance and our space alien buddies, the Watchers, the good guys, the bad guys. Is it biblical? Is it extra biblical with Larantia or some other thing where we're being told stuff? Are the walk-ins here, guiding us through us to keep us from blowing each other up? Where's Eisenhower and all this, and going to find the aliens in Area 51? Look, I can talk all that. I know that turf as well, probably better than almost anybody else that you would have out there, is my guess. Okay. And the problem is what you're actually seeing, my opinion. Okay. Everybody can have their own opinions, free world. Uh, but you're asking my thoughts on this, so I'm going to give you my thoughts. And then people can weigh it out and decide if they agree or disagree or whatever. Um, the the idea that an alliance is here watching our every move, trying to coach us, keep us from disaster, etc. Well, uh, from a biblical standpoint, because I talk biblical at different times, you have the Watchers, and in fact, you go back to early Genesis, and there were angels that were given certain authorities within the creation of the earth. And
Right.
we have Nephilim and things like that, Genesis 6,
Right.
that are there. So clearly there is some extra
Terrestrial involvement.
terrestrial presence. And,
Yeah.
and by that we say this. The earth and everything in it was given to Adam and his seed. If you look at the beginning of Genesis, the earth was void and without form. But when you look at that word, there's really two creations: the creation of everything, and then there is a recreation of the earth, because the void and without form is the same words that are used for a field that is plowed and ready to plant. Okay? For example, where I am right here, 14,000 years ago, the glaciers, the ice, was 2.5 miles high. 1,000 miles south of me at Seattle, the ice 14,000 years ago, 12,000 BC, was 2 miles high over Seattle. So that's all melted. That's gone away. There's no glacier in Seattle right now. You go all the way back up to Mount Rainier. The glacier right here, just a few hundred years ago, extended another 2 miles out to the inlet of the ocean. And in the last 150 years ago, it has receded back massively back towards the mountains. We're in a type of global warming. Doesn't have anything to do with Cadillac SUVs or Bentleys.
Right.
The Earth, that is all receding away. Was there a prehistory prior to Adam? And I think that realistically, we look around the world, we look at all the ancient ruins, the stuff in Libya, the stuff in Egypt, stuff other places. And we see, for example, some of the stuff in Egypt that is actually buried 60 feet beneath the surface. There's a prehistory in Egypt with some of the ancient materials, architecture, museums, and things like that that predates the creation of Adam.
Right.
And so there was some type of humanoid presence in the world, on the earth, prior to the creation of Adam, and there was some intermediate destructive period.
Right.
And there's scripture that appears to back that up. Now, if you go back further, of course, the movie Oppenheimer's out right now. And I've mentioned this story a number of times in interviews, and so it bears repeating here. Oppenheimer, when the bomb was detonated at Trinity, he made a statement. He said, "I am made like God, a destroyer of worlds." Where did he come up with that? Did he have a dream in the middle of the night and decide to come up with that quote? No. Oppenheimer quoted the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
The Bhagavad Gita out of India is this ancient script describing the world in some prehistory era.
Right.
And a lot of people consider this to have been some kind of, fairy tale, fable, etc. But in the Bhagavad Gita, the god Vishnu is described as having a ship that could
Uh-huh.
fly over the earth, over the cities. And from his ship, he could send beams like light that could destroy whole cities. And so he was godlike in his
Right.
ability. Doesn't say that he was God incarnate.
Right.
Doesn't say he was God, creator of all. He was powerful like a god because he could command and destroy cities in some unusual way.
So
Now,
let me ask you
well,
this.
hold on. Let me just finish one thing. This is real important because I'll lose my thought here real quick, and I apologize, but I want to get this one little thing in. In the turn of the century, back before World War One, National Geographic had gone to do some deep research in India. There was two locations in India where children were being born with severe birth defects, and it was a horror. It was terrible, and so well-meaning people put serious money into looking at those cities in India, trying to figure out, is it the water? Is it something in the mineralization in the rock? Is it something in the food supply? What has happened in this area where there had been a long history of birth defects that were way outside anything that you found in other parts of the world? They couldn't find what the issue was. They had excavated some, in the course of it for the National Geographic stuff, some underground cities
Right.
that were where the cities existing today were built on top of old ancient cities from thousands and thousands of years ago. Because World War One came in, they had to stop. And by the way, where were the Nazis looking? What's Indiana Jones about? They're over there looking for ancient technology. Okay.
Technology relics,
Okay. So,
which could
um,
be which could be attributed to the extraterrestrials that came in ancient times. Would you agree that Krishna, the character that you were describing in the Bhagavad Gita, was one of these extraterrestrials with these amazing abilities and weapons?
well, let's get to that in a minute. Let me just finish one thing, and then let's get to that in a second. So, when you looked at those cities, because of World War One, the National Geographic operation.
Hello, hello, Juan, are you there? Your screen just went black. Hello, hello. Hello, Juan. Did I lose you? I mean, it shows that you're still there, but your screen is black. All right,
If I can get this.
there we go. I think you got it back. Oh, there we go. We lost you
Do I
there
still
for a
have you
minute.
there?
We lost you there for a minute, but you're back.
Did I lose you there?
Yeah, yeah. We lost you for a minute, but you're back.
Do I still have you, or did I lose you?
That's a beautiful sight. But continue with what you were explaining, because you were getting somewhere, and everything that you're talking about is so true.
Do I still have you there, or did I lose you?
I'm still here. The question is, are you there? Can you still hear me?
Do I still have you there, or did I lose you?
We're still here. We can hear you. Hey, Juan, can you hear me? Hello? Juan? Hello, hello? Hello, can you hear us?
There you go. Are you still happy there, or did I lose you?
Oh, I can hear you now. You're back. I
Okay.
hope.
All right. I had a call that came in and I couldn't block it. This is a different platform that I've used
Oh,
before.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
But so I apologize on that.
it's okay.
Okay. So let me just power through this real quick because it's an important point. So this after World War II, a photographer for the U.S. Army had decided to do work for National Geographic to pay the bills. Goes back to India, and they had restarted the studies looking at these cities in India where there was all these birth defects, these two cities.
Mhm.
And he gets to the area where they had started these excavations of the cities under the city. And there was art that people had taken pictures of back before World War One,
Right.
where they'd painted these pictures on the sides of the building of family running down the steps and things like that, because you go up on top of the building to cool off at night, no air conditioning.
Right.
And he looks at it and he realized it wasn't a painted picture. He had seen the same thing at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It was the shadow of people who had been vaporized in a nuclear explosion.
Right.
And when they looked at the soil in those areas, they realized they were finding isotopes that were non-naturally occurring, that are artificial, that must be manufactured in a lab. They don't occur naturally in nature. That in fact, what he was looking at was two cities that had been destroyed with nuclear devices in
Right.
some ancient time. And we could even get the timing back to something around 10,000 BC.
Well,
So
yeah, that's what happened to
the
Saddam and
reason,
Gomorrah.
and so the reason I mentioned that is because here on the Earth, you have some kind of an event
Right.
that was a nuclear event that occurred long before we put it together. Well, who had that technology? But now let me just add, because you're going a particular place, and I want people to be careful from my perspective. Was that something? Look at people on the ground that lived in cities. Uh, if you look at the speed of development of the technology to create a nuclear bomb,
Mm-hmm.
you really only needed something around 150 years of technological advancement, from wagons through to steam engines and rail and various refinement techniques, till you had the capability to build the bomb. Does it have to come from aliens from outer space from 5 galaxies away? No. You just had to have natural Earth evolution, technological evolution of
Right.
capabilities, undeterred. And in fact, look at the way that Africa did not industrialize, didn't even use the wheel
Right.
for hundreds of years. They're still carrying stuff around in their head, and they didn't even have good defined roads. Yet to the north, you have Rome with advanced highway systems. Over in South America, advanced road systems and pyramids and other stuff in the same time frame.
Right.
Compared to a lot of the tribalism in Africa prior to Europeans showing up there and building things out.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, in Africa, you did have the pyramids in North Africa, and you had amazing structures. And there is an ancient history going down into South Africa of very advanced cultures there that, time-wise, would also be listed as pre-Adamic, pre-Adam.
Right.
So, but you can have a breakaway civilization, and it only takes a short period of time where they can bring their understanding, their thoughts together in a Tower of Babel type era, which was actually a space program as listed in the Bible. God himself said, if they were not confused in the way that they spoke, which is what he did, confuse their languages, there would be nothing which they imagined which would be impossible to them. Which, if it's nothing which they imagine could be impossible to them, that might even probably encompasses time travel, let's say, or
Right.
any number of things that you can't imagine. does it have to be from galaxies far, far away? Or could it be very close? There's the moon. You can just barely see it coming up over the top of the hill there.
Yeah, and
We're
you
using
do
the front camera on my phone because this platform didn't let me flip the camera. Otherwise, I'd zoom in on it. You'd have a great shot of it. But anyway.
No, I do want to say
Go
want
ahead.
to say that the Tower of Babel incident was definitely a space program, and I actually described that in my book, Our Cosmic Origin. That was the negative, you could say negative functions that were trying to build space rocketry during a time where people needed to evolve spiritually. So the fact that their languages were confused was actually part of making sure that technology didn't surpass spirituality, because back then we weren't ready for this type of technology. However, my friend, I believe now we are. But yeah, you're right. The whole Tower of Babel incident was camouflaged in the Bible as a vertical tower that was being built, but in essence, it was a metaphor describing a space program that was being built by Nimrod and negative breakaway groups, whether you call them ETs or not, that are obviously not earthbound anymore. But is that where you're getting at, right?
Well, I probably wouldn't necessarily go to some of the precise spiritual terms that you're using, but I'm not opposed to it.
Right.
I think, let me just say it this way, because I don't want to lose a lot of people that would think we're getting into woo-woo or silliness or something like that. I don't actually put it in those terms. But imagine that if they came together and were able to build a tower. The tower implies technology,
Right.
building systems, understanding, the physics of, even gravity. What kind of um, structure you need to support something this high, this much weight, the pyramids, etc. So if you have that technology and then you're refining it, if everybody's comparing notes and they're undeterred by war, they're undeterred by um, civil conflict or strife, and they can share their information, um, is the journey from a tower in battle, and especially in a time when people lived much longer lives, by the way, is the journey that far to the first aircraft, the first propulsion systems that are chemical, leading to other things.
Right.
How long is it? Is it 100 years? Is it 150 years? Is it 200 years in the time when people lived longer? And what was the context of that? This was the generations that came after the flood. They knew, and there was two floods. There was a pre-Adamic flood, which is what Plato refers to, and then there was the Noah flood, according to some of those things that are out there, and what I think the archaeology does in fact show us.
Right.
And so, in this post first flood, post diluvian world, this world,
Right.
Satan, Lucifer, the devil, um, he's called a destroyer. He's called a murderer. And so, had he done this, had he presided over some type of ancient destruction, that then God stepped in and made man. And so you say, well, what were the people before? They were humanoid. They probably technically are cousins, but they aren't human in the sense that they are direct descendants of Adam. And so there's some history that appears to be there, that's even intoned in Scripture, that there was a prehistory uh, with humanoids here on the earth
Right.
that
And I agree.
that were destroyed, that destroyed themselves.
Yeah,
And
humanoids that were more advanced than us, apparently.
well, hold on. Let's slice and dice that a second.
Yeah.
That had, through normal uh, build out, scientific process, whatever, had built out to some level that, to all appearances, was at least a match to us. If you say Vishnu, and he's a destroyer of cities and has some nuclear capability. Had that burned out then like a virus, they kill each other in the world, and God had to reinvent the world. Let me tell you that what Howard Hughes believed. And by the way, I know you talk a little bit about Tesla, what Tesla also believed, that we live in a solar system that's a great big huge junkyard, that we live in the debris trail of some ancient civilizations that occupied this corner of our galaxy. And through some destructive process, some cataclysms have been struggling back out of the prehistoric ages, if you will, of our own destruction and having to build back out. And that out across our solar system, we see ancient technology that was spacefaring, that and it becomes excruciatingly interesting. I mean, I could go into minutia, but we'd be here for a week. Of all the things that are there, that as Richard Hoagland says, going somewhere where others have already gone before. I forget exactly how he says it, but going somewhere that others have gone before. We're not plowing new ground here.
Right.
And so, and there's a divine perspective that that which was allowed for the devil and his minions, this Lucifer. Look, if God creates Adam and Eve, they're in the garden.
Right.
He takes Adam and then he takes Eve out of his side, fashions the woman. If God does that and plants them there,
I think he's getting another call. So let's just give him a moment to come back, guys. This is what happens when people call you while you're on your phone. Hey, Juan, you back?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had a call that was coming in. It's just painful for me because I can't block it here.
It sounds like you're a popular guy. Everybody's calling you.
Yeah, well, actually, it's light today. I think I got most of my calls out of the way and let folks know not to call here because I couldn't block this particular platform. Yours is a little different than what I normally have done most shows on. So no problem. Glad to do it. I'll have to learn this specific platform better. It's new to me, so I apologize to your listeners. But if that's true, imagine that Adam and Eve, they're created, they're in the garden, they're having a happy life. Adam was actually what you would call a husbandman to the garden. He was a curator. He learned all the plants, all the animals. It says that God walked with him morning and evening. And the implication is that, Christ, the God man, God putting on human flesh like we put on a coat, and walking amongst us, explained things to Adam in the morning and the evening, gave him essentially his assignment for the day, and that he named all the plants and animals. He understood them intricately. That he was the greatest scientist that ever lived, if you will. He was being taught this stuff. After it gets all to a certain point, he realizes, hey, there's, God, you told me that I would get the earth and everything in it, everything that creeps and crawls and moves upon the earth, as an inheritance for myself and for my offspring. Inheritance means for your offspring. But there's nobody here that's like me, that has flesh like me, that I can mate with. And so God puts him to sleep when he realized, hey, there's no mate, puts him to sleep, wakes him up, and here's Eve beside him, okay? And out of his side, out of the rib, he fashions the woman. So it's bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. It's a perfect match for him. And that means that they can procreate and have children. As Eve is not as advanced intelligence-wise, information-wise, as Adam is. She has the capability to learn everything, but she's got to play catch-up. At some point in there, Adam's not around one day, and an extra outside the garden, extra gardener shows up in the garden. Okay, do we say he's an extraterrestrial? Well, God didn't put him in the creation story with the creation of Adam and Eve and planting him in there in the garden.
Right.
But he is enough humanoid, intelligent enough that he is able to communicate. And then the implication in all of these stories that, for a lot of Christians, they don't want to hear this, but the rabbis and all the others, in this ancient stuff, the implication is that the original sin of Eve was that she had sex with the serpent, sex with Lucifer, the green man, goes by 1,000 names. But he had a different body than just a snake-like body at that time. And in fact, as a result of this sin, God essentially removed his arms and legs, made him crawl on the earth and eat the dust of the earth. So he had a different form prior to this curse being put on him. And that Cain is the child of that mating with Eve. And then Eve went and showed Adam the trick. They had sex, and then Adam and Eve had Abel. So this Cain was a hybrid, part human, part this other entity being who was flesh and blood. It wasn't just spirit. It wasn't ethereal. It was tangible. It had form. It had body, and could mate or copulate and then have an offspring. And so that's this implied thing within the narrative. Now, for a lot of Christians, a lot of believers, that's kind of a hard thing to swallow. At one level, and I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter if you believe that or not, or you don't find it in the scriptures.
Right, exactly.
I tell you that the people today in these families that are bloodlines that are running the earth, they believe that they have the right to rule by blood. They believe that they are the descendants of Cain. And they believe that they are the hybrids, the Cainites. They have a laugh. They have a funny thing with all of the rest of us. They tease us about the reptilians walking amongst us. Well, what they're really saying is they're saying, we are hybrids. We are half human and half Luciferian.
Right, which is reptilian, and that's what
Cain's father
was. Yeah, Cain's father was an actual reptilian. He actually was. He was Enki, by the way. Enki was the snake in the garden. So
well, but let me just say this, okay? And I do understand where you're going. I do understand that conversation, but let me just say this: even amongst many of these people, the Satan, Lucifer, the devil, the green man, he was a liar from the beginning. And he crafts extremely intricate, well thought out lies. Why? Because he's an entity that's lived for eons, not just decades or centuries or millennium. So to have the ability to create a really good, fabricate a really good lie is a real possibility. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that some of these people are in fact, Enkiota and, something else. I think it's open to discussion, and it's not a stupid discussion. But, okay, but let me just say this. Do we need to lose a huge portion of the intelligent people out in these audiences where you don't have enough proof of a lot of the things that you might speculate or say, and you say it as a precise, known, absolute, true fact. You could prove it 10 million ways from Sunday, but you really can't. And then now we've lost a huge swath of the public that doesn't want to hear what you have to say, doesn't believe it. You don't have a way of backing it up precisely. And now you're just the kooks and nuts at the fringe. The way I would say it, I would suggest to your audience, and I think it's the right way, but I'm open. Look, we're having a conversation here.
Right.
I think the right way to say it is the way they say it. They, this elite group of people who are putting their leadership in positions of authority and power, who are commanding much of the way the world works, they believe that they are the descendants of Cain.
Right. Which are the same descendants of Nimrod. It repeats through Nimrod's genealogy. Because Cain was prior to the flood, Nimrod came after the flood, but it's the same genealogy.
Right. So, but what I'm saying is that belief is a driver of action. The reason they do a lot of the stuff they do is because they have certain beliefs that determine how they're going to do stuff, why they're going to do stuff, that drive them to think and operate a certain way. They believe that they are the descendants of Cain, that they're the ones that own the world and should own the world. And that if you get right down to it, belief is the driver of action. It makes sense. So that sense of elitism comes from this belief that the descendants of Cain.
Juan, I think we're losing reception. Oh, there he goes. Let me bring him back in.
Yep, sorry about that.
It's okay.
So it was foreign to me when I first heard it, but the more I understand, whatever the truth is, they're operating based on a certain belief.
Right.
If you get right down to it and you look at the way that the world is operating, the way things are happening, evolving, whatever, that belief is a pretty important point. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It doesn't matter as a Christian, which I am, that I'm right or not in believing or not believing that. It's what our enemy, who we are opposed by in the way the world works right now.
Yeah, because they really believe in their God, and their God is Lucifer, the reptilian. Yeah, the reptilian gene.
Yeah. And they believe, by the way, that part of expressing their superiority requires that in a survival of the fittest kind of a mentality, they exercise their superiority even to their diet, which means consuming an inferior species or group.
Now,
So
do you have any awareness of the character known as Lilith, who many believe was the second?
Yeah.
So who was Lilith? Obviously, she wasn't Eve, but she was also married to Adam.
Well, again, now you're getting into how much of that can you prove, or how much of that is the myth that was encapsulated to confuse, to tell a different story. Is it in fact, it's somebody's scripture? Is it the true story? When you go back to Egypt, there's an interesting book. It's the book that history of from Adam to
I think we're
Jacob.
There you go.
Yeah, it's the history of from Adam, the first 50 days out of the garden with Eve. and what that was all about, the way that they understood it. There's other histories that were put in, but I believe that one, because it was the oral history that was put into written form, that when Jacob got to Egypt and Joseph was there as the number two in charge of Egypt, that had got there when his brothers sold him into slavery, and eventually ended up having the interpretation of the dream where Pharaoh made him, put him in charge of everything in Egypt. He recorded the family history as they moved into Egypt. That's the book of Adam and Eve.
Right.
In that, which I think is the purest of the forms, it's not scripture because it's not precisely recorded exactly as, say, the book of Moses was and some of the other writings. So it's not like there may be variations in interpretation. So it's poetry in a sense, but it gives this rough view of things. And there's no mention of Adam having two wives in that. Doesn't mean that it couldn't have happened, but I don't believe that's quite. I'm not buying into that. And I believe that there is people with motivations, the devil himself, Lucifer, trying to convolute our understanding of history in order to get us to buy into certain things that favor his side of the story, that don't actually, that just are not the truth. Is it possible? I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that from my perspective, and you look out across the other things, actually that is not. Adam didn't have two wives. It was later with Lamech that a person having two wives became the thing. Was there, and part of that conversation, by the way, goes into, well, Cain is sent into exile. He goes to a city and he marries a woman. Where'd she come from? Was that a child of Adam and Eve? Were there other humanoids still on the planet? Certainly the devil wasn't in the creation story. Where'd he come from? Did he just land from outer space?
Right.
So, and by the way, there's some indication that may very well be true, because the highest um, um, archaeological site for the UN, for a historical site on the planet, is at the top of Mount Hermon. And what's the significance of the top of Mount Hermon? That's where the 200 all male supposedly landed, fell to earth. And at the base of Mount Hermon, kind of like an Olympic, God, the city that is being true for.
I'm losing you. You sound very choppy. I think. Hey, Juan, can you hear me? You sound very choppy.
I should pretty. But,
Are you still there? Okay, I can hear you now. There is one thing. There is somebody that I do want to ask you about who claims to be the, you could say, the walking of JFK Sr. And he just came on the circuit about a month or two, and he's been everywhere. He goes by the name of Pascal Nahadi. Have you heard of him? Hello?
Let me just say that I don't think that that's going to end nicely or smoothly. That he says some interesting, fun things and like that before it's over with. I don't think that it will pan out in a nice way. I'm not the internet police. Don't want to be in that position. I just don't think that that's something that's going to actually have helped us in the end, and it's not accurate.
Are you referring to my question regarding Pascal Nahadi? Hi,
I'm
are
sorry.
you there?
Yeah, say it again. I'm sorry.
I said, is that referring to the question about Pascal Lahadi? Remember, I
Yeah,
asked.
I don't think that storyline and some of the statements there are going to turn out to have been of much
Mhm.
utility here within the conservative community. And I'm not the internet police. I have no
Right.
desire to be in some place of who is the good guys and the bad guys and all that. But I don't think that's actually something that's going to have helped us in the end.
Okay, so he's definitely not the you could say the spirit or the soul of JFK Senior back in human form, basically, as he's claiming to be.
Well, let's just see what happens. It is not something that I'm personally going to give much weight to, but it's a free world and people can go out and make their decisions.
Now,
I'd rather stay focused in the more tangible side of things where we're at. And I'm not saying within this interview, within the stuff in the
right,
community that I would personally address. I'm not going there, don't have time for that. We have much more
right,
tangible, substantial things that are going on that I think we have to be focused on than some of the uh, silliness, woo woo, whatever that I think is out there. And by the way, I had lots of people, pressed me hard early on. No, you got to join in, you got to help, you got to be whatever. Well, no, actually, I don't. And that's not, we have enough stuff that's solid, that is very serious, that is life and death for America.
mhm,
That is where my focus is. And I don't think that for me personally, and I think even for this audience, I don't think we have time for that kind of
right,
mischief, silliness at this
right.
point in time.
I feel you. All right, so getting back to what's currently going on right now regarding this Russian warship thing, is this part of a larger, like, say, operation aimed at removing Brandon? Brandon sits in the White House, and does it signify the imminent return of 45, soon to be 47?
Well, uh, let me just say it this way. Um, you feel it in the air.
Mhm.
Dan Scavino put out the video with Phil Collins. I can feel it in the air tonight here a couple of weeks ago. And I put that out a few times over time. He used a different concert than I did. I did the nighttime one, he did the daytime one. But you can feel it coming. It'll be very hard to pull off the ruse that Biden won an honest
Uh-huh.
election as we move into later into the year. So the
Right.
question becomes, uh, uh, under what circumstances will Trump be brought back into power? Uh, is it as a result of some cataclysmic action between the Trump lovers and the people trying to block or steal an election? Or can the election even happen on time? I'm of the community that believes that we're not going to have the election on time in November, not because Trump or the military or anybody else goes in to stop it in that way, but because the people pulling Biden's strings, uh, the people behind Biden. Remember, uh, Putin said to Tucker in the Tucker interview that Biden is not running Washington, D.C., he's not running America. And Tucker inquired, well, is it Obama? Who is it? And Putin said, it doesn't matter who it is. You don't even know the names of the people running America.
Right.
Um, they're hidden to you. But know for sure it's not Biden, not that crowd, right? So who is running America? Who's pulling the puppet strings, not just of Biden, but Obama and others in these positions of authority over
Right.
America and the people here? Well, whoever they are, they um, they get their players into power through fraudulent elections. More valuable than a um, counterfeit dollar or any currency in the world. More valuable than a counterfeit currency is a counterfeit vote. And what we have in America is people counterfeiting votes so that they can put people of their choosing into positions of authority over America so that they can use our resources, our military, our politics, our industry to do their bidding out across the world. And if Biden isn't running America, yet we're moving from a proxy conflict with Russia and Ukraine to a direct conflict with Russia in Europe. Who's engineering that to happen behind the scenes? Who's moving the pieces on the chessboard to cause America to go to war in Central Europe with nuclear weapons? And to what purpose? To what end? Now, going back to something you said a few minutes ago, and I just want to revisit this for a second. There's this belief that we're going to be spared some type of a direct nuclear exchange by some watcher crowd, something extraterrestrial in origin and nature, that they're going to save us from our own future. But I will tell you that, in fact, that was part of the narrative that was being put in place with the breakaway civilization that we're ultimately really fighting. They aren't from another galaxy far, far away. They're just a breakaway civilization.
Yeah, right.
Believe certain narratives so that we're being pre-programmed to operate in a certain way. And that when remember Hillary in 2016 during the presidential election process, Hillary, who miraculously had the J. Rockefeller book talking about extraterrestrials and how they're going to influence the world, going all the way back to Roswell and all the stuff. Look, you're looking at a bunch of CIA people, a bunch of sci-fi people that have carefully engineered certain narratives in order to manipulate societal response across the planet to accept certain things as true that are actually great propaganda. And when Hillary was running for election 2016, and she was obvious in trouble, and there's months, just a couple months to go, we actually have the communications. It's in the WikiLeaks download that Assange put out there. The stuff that came out of the election process there with Seth Rich and stuff. So in there it says, is it time to play the alien card? The alien card? Is it time to play the alien card? Hillary was dialed in on a propaganda event that was scheduled for some time in human history, that was being prepared, set up for some period of time, and she referred to it as the alien card, and that would be so that they could still get her into power because Trump was becoming too powerful. And and was it time to play the alien card? And then I go to look at the events in Vegas. Ooh, there's aliens in the backyard in Vegas. Okay, well, we have Generation 7 stealth suits that are extremely good at generating holographic images around the suit now. Prior, they just generated an image on the skin of the suit. Now they generate a holographic image around the suit. I can make you look like a bear. I can make you look like a deer. I can make you look like something else when you're in the suit. It generates an image that looks like the background behind you, and you blend in. Kind of
you sound far away. I don't know if you're losing reception, but you sound like you're far away. There we go. You're back.
Yeah, it's not for me. It's just probably users coming on, too many of them at a time or something. At the end of the day, you have to be very careful that you don't get sucked in to extremely sophisticated magic acts.
Right.
Okay. And uh, it's just like you and I. Somebody's out there with AIs generating shows, generating conversation and text, and pretending to be you or I. That's how we ended up coming into contact with each other. Because you
Can
have
you
an
send me
audience,
that
somebody's
link?
trying to cook it.
Can you
Say again?
send me that? Because I had no clue that somebody was generating an AI version of me and putting out information that, that is not
I
me.
will.
Send that link
Yeah,
to
and I did send that over to Mel, and I'll send that to you. And then of course all these fake, subscribers to your channel. What that particular
me.
one was, trying to suck people in, like I'm trying to get them to buy dinar and zim bonds, and I've
Right.
agreed with that. And so you have people that would be, I'm not doing that. That's stupid. He's a black guy. He's trying to take us into some silliness. Well, it's not
All
me.
right. With all due respect, Juan, I do want to know something regarding your latest visit to Antarctica, which took place according to the Cassie interview. Can you elaborate on whether there was any extraterrestrial beings present at the meeting, or what you might call them something else, members of the Breakaway group, Breakaway civilization, and what insights did they share regarding AI and its operations? Because I am particularly interested in understanding the communications involving with this thing called the AIQ. Were you there about? Do you know anything about the AIQ?
That people speculate. If you didn't hear it from me, it probably wasn't from me. And certainly that that there's pretty imaginative stuff out there. Well, I didn't say anything of the sort. And then as far as there's a difference between extraterrestrials coming and running the planet and a breakaway that has just uh, moved into a very powerful position. The reality is that one cannot be confused with the other. And as I said just now, there's this desire to create and fabricate a certain belief that then belief is the driver of action. If people believe it's extraterrestrials from far, far away, as opposed to particular bloodlines trying to create an illusion that you'll then act on. Great magic, great propaganda. It requires a different outcome. Look at the Phoenix Lights event from a couple decades back. That was not extraterrestrials. That was amazing holographic generators and testing a system that we'd had in place that was the latest version that we'd been testing for 2 decades prior to that. And people are seeing the portholes on the side of the ship and aliens in the window and all sorts of things. It was just an extremely good holographic generator that also created a reflection or a return for radars in the region in particular locations. Uh, Not extraterrestrials, it's just really cool technology. The same stuff was used to project an image that looked like Christ returning
Right,
to
right.
a group in a certain location, and they totally believed it. I've been in the room with fifth generation uh, suit that
Right.
was used for camouflage.
Well, you're talking about
Demonstration.
Project Bluebeam, right? Project
Well,
Bluebeam.
in that particular thing, and of course, you're talking much more uh, advanced operations than anything that goes back to Bluebeam 50 years ago. Okay, so imagine the an AI augmented system that is 50 years, 60 years advanced from some of the stuff we had back then, and the ability to generate stuff. I mean, you go look at some of the holographic generation systems, and you can be a few feet from them, and it absolutely looks totally real. It's just stunning. Um, reach out and touch type of stuff. So with that in mind, are we being messed with, played with? And again, if you believe it, when a magician does a magic show in front of you, and if you don't know how they're doing it, it looks like it's real. That's the intent. It's magic, but it's made to look completely plausible, made to look completely real. And so you have to be really, 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 um, discerning of the man. Let me add one thing here. Just something that comes to mind right now. You do realize that Aleister Crowley, who was part of the Tavistock operation, he was actually an asset to British intelligence
Right.
during the war, Second World War, and gave Churchill. Churchill wanted a sign to show that was more powerful than the Nazi salute with the hand out as a flat palm out salute. And
Right.
so Aleister Crowley is the one that gave Churchill the peace sign and, rock, paper, scissors type of thing. And so that is divide. And so when he did that, it divides the power or the force of the outstretched palm. He asked for that because Crowley was into witchcraft. He was into um, these spiritual things. How do we come up with a sign symbolically that's more powerful than the Nazi salute? And it was this peace sign that divides. It's civil war. It breaks something up. And that's why he was putting that out there. Well, Crowley famously was meeting with an entity that was
Yes.
giving him information. And that
Right.
entity, he drew pictures of it. And it was in the gray, in the dark, in the shadows. And it was this gray creature. Well,
Right.
it's remarkably exactly identical to your little gray aliens. Why? Because what you're really looking at is the devil's demon depictions that he put down. So when you get right down to it, is it a space alien or is it his demon? And then it becomes propagated out through society, the grays, the kids. Uh, you know, how much of what you're hearing about is truth, and how much is a attempt to twist your consciousness and get you to believe a fabrication, a lie that serves somebody else's purposes. You see what I'm saying? So I think we need to be careful that we're not easily taken off into some of these stories. Now, do I believe that we live in a solar system that has all sorts of artifacts from some prehistory of civilization? I actually do. And I think there's even scripture to back that up. And that these 200 that fell to earth at Mount Hermon are actually their progeny, their descendants may, in fact, be
Right.
in very powerful positions on the earth.
Right.
But
Which deviated from the original Adamic blueprint or the original Adamic DNA. As to why Noah needed to be, preserved when the good guys decided to reset everything during the flood event.
that's exactly right. Because,
Yeah.
see,
Because there was a
with
corruption
Noah,
of
it says that
place.
Noah was perfect in all of his generations,
Right.
that Noah alone was perfect and without sin in all of his generations. It wasn't that Noah was a perfect man without sin. It was a perfect man without sin in all of his generations. He wasn't a hybrid.
He wasn't a hybrid. He was a pure angelic, real descendant of the original
Well,
Adam,
not angelic.
second Adam.
Not, no,
There's
not
two Adams,
angelic.
brother.
He was a pure descendant, a direct descendant. Why does the Bible tell us, all of his ancestors back to Adam directly? Because he was pure human, a pure descendant without um, any um, taint.
Without gray or reptilian genetics, in other words.
Well, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever Lucifer is, whatever his connection is, that entity, he was not a hybrid. He was a pure descendant of Adam. And
Right.
so that was the basis for having to destroy humankind on the earth. And by the way, it wasn't just humans. Why did he take all of the animals? Why did Noah take all the animals in the ark? Because they were doing genetic work that was altering the animal uh, kingdom also. And so the animals were brought in by twos
Yeah.
that had also not been hybridized.
Right.
And so that the earth could be repopulated without the taint of hybridization out into the animal world, including probably human genetics or the um, alien genetics, if you will, out into the animal population also.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. That we could agree on, my friends. You know, there was a huge, massive genetic tampering that just went wayward before the flood. Let's just call it, like, you talked about pre-civilizations that were, according to the fossil record and all the evidence, by far more advanced than what we are right now, in comparison with technology, of course, and everything else. But yes, there was definitely some sort of hybridization programs that were being conducted by what you would call, I guess, these breakaway groups that have now returned and are trying to do the same thing. But, I call them negative aliens. But one thing that I did come to understand, Juan, and you might even agree with me, is that Earth was the first planet ever. First of all, Earth has many dimensional selves. So in the higher dimensional reality, well, when we would consider the original spiritual atom, not the atom that was made in the lab, in the laboratory, right? That was the Anunnaki loop atom that they called the Lulu. But the original atom actually descended from a higher sphere or a higher dimension, and lowered its frequency to come into physicality. And therefore the original atom was immortal. So basically,
Well, let me hold on. Let me kind of answer that.
oh wait, let me finish my train of thought.
Okay.
Just one thing.
Okay.
So basically,
Okay.
all of these breakaway groups, we have negative breakaway groups, right, that are associated with the fallen angels, which we could both agree on have a strong concentration of reptilian genetics that are not human. And then we also have the positive breakaway groups that are associated with the children of light, the children of God, where they're, to some extent, yes, they are descendants of those that didn't rebel against God, those that did not follow Lucifer, and then we are their progeny. In that regard, these breakaway civilizations are the different extraterrestrials that exist throughout the universe, because guess what? This was the original home for all of them. They all broke away at one point or another. When you consider the fact that civilizations have actually been here for millions of years, and just the most recent one, which many call Atlantis, was actually was a newcomer compared to some of the older civilizations that have been breaking away from this planet for over millions and millions of years.
Well,
So,
actually, if you're going to go that route, just for food for thought for discussion,
uh,
um, our circadian rhythm, the rhythm that our bodies goes to naturally when you put crews in submarines, you take away the day-night cycle, the natural day-night cycle. Our bodies go to a circadian rhythm that matches Mars, not Earth. So to say that Earth, it'd be like saying the Earth is the center of our solar system or galaxy, and then Galileo shows up and says, no, actually the sun is. Okay. I think there's a certain crowd that has, again, come in, put a lot of speculative stuff as fact. Let me say it this way. Let me just say this one thing. Part of the reason that these cases have been thrown out of court uh, regarding the vote fraud that was endemic in the 2020 and 2022 election is because you had outside experts looking at the data, applying scientific reasoning to what that data was telling you and saying that this could not be a natural vote. It could not possibly be the case. Courts have rejected those arguments, and people have lost their cases because the courts have said that those arguments are speculative. You don't have the corpus delicti. You don't have the body of the evidence. You don't have um, the original. You don't have corpus delicti is the body. It's like saying somebody was murdered. Well, I see a bunch of blood on the ground. Where's the murder weapon? Where's the body itself? Produce the body. And so if you don't have that, then you're speculative. And the reason we're going to, by the way, knock the hell out of them over the next many months is because now we have the people that actually did the theft. We actually have their um, computer records. We have all the original stuff and their testimony, their affidavits, their statements. Here's what I did. Here's how I did it. Here's the stuff that backs it up, the murder weapon, if you will, and the corpus delicti, the body of the evidence. We will prevail in the court stuff moving out in the future, including in military courts, because of that. When you put out stuff as though you have all of the facts and it's based on these outside observations, it may be interesting and it may look to be true and it may in fact be true, but you haven't produced the body of the evidence in my opinion, and therefore it's still speculative and you have to leave it at that until you have the hard data that backs it up. For example, within these groups or cults, they believe the same as the Mayans did, that we're the fourth um, dominant race on the planet. The one before us was the cat people. And they believe that when you go out and find the cat people and the
Well,
libraries of
you
the
just said
cat
the
people,
cat
you'll
people.
find that out in the asteroid belt.
You
And
just
so
said the
that's kind
cat
of,
people. The
say
cat
again?
people, there's actually a group of extraterrestrials known as the felines. They come from Lyra. You just mentioned the cat people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very familiar with the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm totally up to speed. That's Captain Corbett. That's
Yeah.
the whole narrative. These ancient societies have encapsulated a lot of this data for a very long time. I remember when I went down to one of the pyramids that we uncovered down in Mexico that hadn't been seen in probably a millennia. And we traced it from a road system, found it from the space shuttle, and then went down on the ground and actually found it buried in the foliage. And the locals knew the building was there, this pyramid structure, but nobody cared. They're out in the middle of nowhere. They're Mayans. But that's the Mayan history. They believe there was a pre-history on the Earth with the cat people, and that they came from someplace else. As you go to
Right.
Africa, you have the Dogon tribe,
Right.
the Dog Star Sirius. There's a history there.
Right.
You have buried cities like what we have up in Turkey, and ruins there that appear to go back before Adam. You have the Vishnu and the Bhagavata, and evidence of some pre-Adamic history. Look, we can date those nuclear isotopes in those cities in India
Mhm.
back 10,000 BC. So
Right.
how's that happen? Okay, so there's some prehistory there. I think that
Right.
is valid, and I think what we have to understand that there was a creation that where Adam was planted in the earth, and Adam was going to build out the earth. That was why Lucifer hated Adam so much. God had given Adam dominion over the earth and everything in it, given him ownership over the earth. It was his. And
Uh-huh.
then dominion over everything that creeps and crawls upon the earth. Why did they choose the name Dominion vote machines? Because they want to redominate the planet with the illusion of an honest vote, letting them take control again. And out across the planet, 71 countries, they flipped the vote in those countries over the last several decades to put their leaders in place. And that's what you're going to hear about over the next many months and years as we bring out the information on that.
Right.
These frauds. I tie it back to that because it's a very real aspect of all the other stuff we're talking about. There is a hidden elite. That's what Putin described when he told Tucker, you don't even know the names of the people running America. He has, arguably as good of an intelligence operation as anybody on the planet. And he knows it's not Biden. He knows it's not Obama. It's people you don't even know the name of who are
Right.
bringing us to the brink of nuclear war.
Right.
So when we talk all of these other things, we talk the 200 landing at Mount Hermon, and then Hillary wants to bring an archway from the city of Bale at the base of Mount Hermon, where the 200 landed. and bring it to New York and do a speech from there, and then she's going to take the presidency of the United States and win the election. Let me add this one thing, and I know it's bouncing around for people, but think about this. They claim ancestry to some Luciferian parentage that is the father of Cain. They're the Cains or the kings. Cain, that is what Cain means, king, Cain. Cains of the earth. Right to rule by blood, okay? Right to screw around and fuck anybody they want because they're the superior race, or eat them. And then you hear all of that. They want to run your planet. It's not benign. They aren't from galaxies far, far away. They create illusions trying to get people to believe certain things that aren't really truth. But while you're confused trying to get your bearings, they're taking over your planet in a very physical way with their friends, their bloodlines. That's what Bill Clinton said. Bill Clinton said that he only got to be president because he had the tutorage, the he had a member of the historical society, if you will, who wrote Hope, Tragedy and Hope, Carol Quigley. Carol Quigley was invited in to document the history of this hidden elite.
I talked about that in my book, by the way.
Okay. And so Bill Clinton said that Carol Quigley's mentorship is the reason that he became president. He said that in the inauguration. He gave Carol Quigley direct credit. He gave Quigley credit because of the hidden bloodlines. Bill Clinton's a Rockefeller. His dad was Winthrop Rockefeller. He understood what was going on in the background and what it meant, and he was blessed to be able to come into power because he understood those hidden relationships and the protections thereof, and who he really was, who his father really was, and with the hidden bloodlines. Now you come forward to today, and they've built out into places all over the world where their hidden bloodlines are now in command positions. They don't, they may consider themselves to have some alien parentage, but they're operating the human world. I don't need to lose most of the voters who don't even understand that conversation. They just need to understand there's a power elite taking over the planet for their purposes and trying to bring us to the brink of some destructive war where we self-destruct everything north of the equator. So these elitists can rebuild the world in their image, like Nero. Burn the world down, burn Rome down, and rebuild it in their image. And we have to stop them. I don't need to worry about space aliens from Alpha Centauri. I know their rituals, and they love to do rituals timed to eclipses and celestial events and gates and windows in the ethereal. And they like to give the illusion that they have backing and assistance from our watching partners nearby in space and close by and all the other stuff. But I'm telling you, to retake control of the planet, I don't have to go those places, and I don't have to take people those places. The fight is much more tangible and doable within the information we have, the systems we have. The planet was given to Adam and his seed. God himself is behind us on this. And we're not going to have, even if there are extraterrestrials, if there are watchers out there trying to adjust things. No, it says watchers. They're watching. They're not necessarily doing.
I do
In fact, the angels, from a Genesis standpoint, the angels that were present were to block interactions that were unauthorized by any of these other beings while the Earth was in this formative stage, in this crib-like stage, in the bassinet as we evolved to a certain point. Is it space aliens that stop nuclear war on planet Earth? I'm going to tell you, if you read Revelations, nuclear war happens on planet Earth. They're not blocking shit. It's God himself that's giving us time till we reach this next phase, which leads to Armageddon. We're going to war with China. It's a ways out. We're going to get a reprieve. We're going to get Trump back in. We're going to get our bearings and our wits. And then America is part of the fight against
Right.
this antichrist mentality, this anti-human period, where
Which
those
is the machine.
people want to destroy the earth except
Right.
for their Cainite bloodlines.
Right. Yeah.
It's
That
Cain
point.
versus Abel all over again,
Right.
but this time they seek to own the earth and everything in it, and all descendants of Seth, um, uh, uh, Abel's brother,
Right. Well, it's an
are
ancient old
destroyed.
bloodline that could actually be traceable to, other solar systems according to my research. But it is the bloodline. It is a battle of the bloodlines. One of them goes directly to Lyra, and the other one goes directly to the Draco star system, where the fallen angels have their origin. Now, I do agree with you that this planet was intended to be inherited by Adam's progeny, but there has been many attempts by the opposite bloodline, right? What we call the reptilian bloodline, or the human reptilian hybrid bloodline, the elite bloodline, or not the elite, but the powers that were, to hijack that and, of course, install absolute dominance over the descendants of Adam. And a lot of this has a lot to do also with the why they persecuted the descendants of King David, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, why they were always sought after in order to end their bloodline. But of course, through positive secret societies, which is what I would call the white hats that have existed throughout all of history, they were able to preserve this bloodline. And this bloodline is what's giving us, the Kennedy family, right? The Trump family, same bloodline. It's just in a different time. So a lot of people assume that you perhaps could be, JFK Jr. Harry Cassidy has mentioned that a few times. You never said you were, but what is your relationship with him?
Uh, there is a history there, but I never talk about it, and there'll be a time when we can discuss it, but it's not for now. Let me just say this, uh, and um, because I enjoy talking with disparate audiences, I enjoy you have a lot of knowledge of some things that are this this other documents purporting to show certain histories and like that I actually get. I actually get those conversations, um, uh, and the work Carrie. Let me just say this: uh, for all that Carrie covers a lot of very unusual information, I have a lot of respect for what she did with the Camelot project and the presentations over time that were really pretty cutting edge over time. The one thing I have a concern with all of this audience with is you can get so heavenly minded you're no earthly good. You can
Mhm.
get so out there on a lot of this stuff where you lose the population on the numbers. At this exact moment in history, we need to find the stuff that we absolutely agree on, which is 80, 90% of things. And there's some fish bones out there to understand certain parts of history. It's like, well, the Earth is the center of the universe. Well, maybe you find out that it isn't. That the sun is the center of our solar system, not the center of the universe. And the center of the universe is somewhere beyond our galaxy. But it takes time to do those observations and kind of weigh things through. We may not have enough data and data points to fully grasp everything that is in the history of this creation, of what God's put together.
Right. There's still a lot
Do
to
I need
uncover.
right? Do I need at this exact moment in time to understand all of that to be in the fight? This exact set. Look, we're in a street fight. There's a lot of stuff, things happening in a city 1,000 miles away may or may not have much impact on my situation door to door in the middle of a street fight to take your country back, to
Mhm.
stop the overthrow of a government of the people, by the people, for the people. You started this conversation with the Magna Carta. The consent of the people to rule If you don't have the consent of the people, then you're a tyrant. And that's what the Magna Carta is all about. We as a people here on this planet are being managed by magicians, by Merlins, who seek to bait us into fights, into conversations that at the end of the day are meaningless to our current survival and existence. At this exact moment, we're on the brink of nuclear war. We're being thrown into a fight with our natural ally. Russia is a natural ally of America, and yet we're being baited into fighting each other to the benefit of some groups that seek to rule and reign over us because we weaken each other by fighting. We don't have to go too deep into some of these other narratives to understand the risk to us. We don't have to look far, far away in our thoughts and imaginations. There's stuff that I enjoy. I have actually an excellent sci-fi book and magazine collection that I just love. That I've read much of it, and I enjoy it tremendously when I get time. But I haven't had time for the last many years to be there because I'm engaged in the real world, not the imaginations, which I love to consider the possibilities and understand stuff that's out there, but it won't save the day right now. And so my only concern is, while we have some of these fish bones out there, I want to understand their psychology. For example, to understand my enemy, these people believe that they're the descendants of a fallen race that came from somewhere outside of Earth itself, that Lucifer, the 200, these other groups, that they fell to Earth. And then they demonstrate their belief with all sorts of ceremonies with falling to Earth. George Bush, 3 times after he left the presidency, parachuted or fell to Earth, his 70th, 80th, and 90th birthdays, mimicking that he was a child of Satan, Lucifer, the devil, to show that to the world. The Queen, at the opening of the 2020 Olympics, or 2012 Olympics, and you can go to the Queen's archive. She has Daniel Craig in this official video that's done. It's actually very fun. It's a comic, it's great comic relief. She arrives at the 2012 Olympics, which is the Triple X Olympics. Okay, the maximum power of a spell is 3 times. So 3 times the X, and X marks the spot. X was the sign of Cain, by the way. The mark is what they believe, crossed horns off the head. So the 2012 Olympics had all sorts of meaning, but what's she do? She is escorted by James Bond, which James Bond is allegory for John Dee, the magician, the Merlin, if you will, the spy who protected the Queen.
Right. Elizabeth the First was a reptilian queen. Yeah.
Yes. And so he escorts the Queen out to the helicopter. They get on it. They fly over to the stadium. And then she jumps with James Bond, falls to Earth with all the world watching in this great stadium for the beginning of the 2012 Olympics. Go watch the video. It's amazing. And then everything in that video has occult symbology. Occult meaning hidden symbology. They're hiding right there in plain sight. Just like, the reptilians. They walk amongst them. They're hidden right in plain sight. It's the hidden bloodlines.
Exactly.
So we are fighting with people that all descendants, direct descendants of Adam, must be destroyed.
Right.
And it's a Cain Abel story being played out right in plain sight. If I understand that, I understand the most important part of the equation. They want us dead, and they want to take all of this that the creator of Adam told Adam it's his. He gave Adam the earth and everything that's in it for an inheritance to his children's 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 children forever. And he gave Adam authority over everything that creeps and crawls and moves upon the earth. And this Luciferian crowd believes that they have the right to rule by blood, that they're not merely human, they're more than human. And that we are like the cows of the earth. We are the apes. We are the planet of the apes, and they're the superior species that landed here, and they need to dominate, take over the planet, take it away from us because we're just dumb apes. That's the story that you're watching played out right in plain sight all around the world. And that's where we have to decide, are you going to have a strategy that is going to win? Are you going to negotiate? Remember the scene in Independence Day and the scene with the alien, and the president is there talking through the glass with the alien who's choking and using the vocal cords of the scientist to speak through the dead scientist. And he president asks him, what do you want from us? What is it that you seek here? What can we work out? We'll try to work something out. And the alien responds, I want you to die. We don't want anything you have. There's nothing you have we care about. As far as you personally, we just want the whole planet. We want you to die. And they're like locusts on the earth, destroying everything. Okay, they're going to, take everything and move on. They're a predator race. In that same sense, they're telling you who they are. They don't want anything from the children of Adam. They don't want anything from that creation. Whether you believe that God, some unbelievably huge being that creates universes, created Adam, or some sub-god, if you will, that controls some region of the galaxy that to us, his authority, power, creative abilities exceed ours by some unbelievable thing, living not just thousands of years, but millions or billions of years, has reached some, high state and can create humans or something like that. However you want to view that, those are things that we can talk about, and I can have that religious conversation with people, and it's actually an important conversation. But at this exact second, at this exact moment in history, we're in a street fight, and you may not live long enough to have that spiritual conversation because these people seek your extermination. You are just an infestation. You are just in their way. And if you're going to survive, we have to use the tools that are available to us. And it's not coming from outer space. It's not coming from Alpha Centauri. Not their narrative is not what's happening here. They are creating propaganda that hopefully you'll act on, that you'll stop based on. No, we're going to stop them putting false leaders that do not represent us into positions of power and authority to govern over us as though they are doing the will of the people. Mm-hmm. The will of the people must be honored. That's the Magna Carta. They do not have the right to govern over us. They are there through frauds. Right. Therefore, they must be removed. Death to tyrants. They are a tyrannous crowd of elites seeking to dominate us to do their will. And their will is the will of their father, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, the green man. To right. Kill, destroy, rape, pillage, consume the earth, destroy the earth, and move on. We're not going right. to let them do that. Yeah, they're under a satanic illusion, and we're not going to be part of their, wet dream.
Right. That was the same protocol and creation myth that was given to the reptilians of the Draco star system, the Draconians, as to why they call every fascist system that deals with absolute power and control draconian. Right. That's a term that they use to describe that.
Well, but let me hold on. Let me just. And I've got to go. I've got people waiting for it. But let me just say this: mm-hmm. I get all of that, and I'm not even arguing with it. Not, it's an interesting conversation, but the reality is, as I said before, speculative. Are we going to deal with uh, the fact where we have the corpus electi, and are we going to separate speculative from the stuff that we do know and can prove precisely? We know that there's an elite that's trying to take over and control the planet. Do we have the documentation with the cat people that the Mayans had? Look, I've gotten through all this stuff. It's amazing. It's just stunning. I've seen some of the stuff that Hughes had. And have been the recipient of much of that. It's very interesting stuff. Some of the stuff that Tesla understood and saw, and that's a whole other conversation that we can't start that today. But all of that, if I get tied up in the draconians and everything else, I think we go too far afield and we lose sight of the instant battle that we are in. It is a street fight. I cannot be distracted with what's going on in Berlin while I'm in the middle of a street fight trying to get off the beaches and up into town in Normandy. I will not make it with having my brain or my mind or my thoughts or my actions distracted by that. You got to get in the moment. And this is a street fight for who's going to actually run this national machine of people called America. And then we, somewhere down the road, may have the luxury of debating some of these things and looking at the records and looking at the information and understanding it. But I don't think that that saves us in this exact moment. And so for myself and for the people that we're talking to, I actually enjoy the back and forth on some of this stuff. And I think your audience does too. And that's why it doesn't bother me. You have an audience that has a particular viewpoint and understanding, and they're debating some of this stuff, and it's enjoyable. But at the same moment, I want to bring it back to, okay, and now what are we going to do to save ourselves, save our life, save our country? So we even have a country where we can have these conversations. You know, we have to be careful about using certain terms, certain references, because our ability to connect through social media is being chopped off. They won't even let us have certain conversations. We can be in the ethereal. We can be out there with the draconians and stuff like that. Nobody bothers us. We get closer to home to this exact instant, and the mechanisms of control for our conversations, for our interactions that affect our day-to-day lives, how our life energy through taxes and other things is sucked off of us and used for other people's work. And all of a sudden, you're too close to the reality and not lost in the matrix. They want you lost in the matrix. And so there has to be some balance here that we exercise in what we're willing to do and converse about, and where that converts to current action and save ourselves as a people. And I think for the moment, that on a Saturday night, enjoying Land of the Midnight Sun out here, it's fun. But then again, we've got to get back to some level of reality so that in the future we're going to be able to come back and visit some of these things and weigh them out and understand them better. But for the moment, we got to also focus on the reality. These people, entities, clubs, secret handshake groups, they desire us to be lost in the minutia so that they can own the day. And before we realize it, we're exterminated, not them.
All right, Juan O Savin, thank you so much for being here. I know you have something to do now, and we did go over 2 hours. Let's do a part two. I do have a perspective to all of this, and I would like to share that as well. And yeah, I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that you mentioned that I totally agree on, specifically.
Well, and I think, you know, let me just say this.
Yeah.
You know, for most of the people doing some of the work with the history that I have, they would never have this conversation. I actually enjoy it, and I think it is important. So I don't want people to think I'm trying to blow it off by coming back to the current politics, election, things like that. It's just that we do have to have the to be together with you and some of the other people and look at some of the things, the ideas, some of the understanding, some of the history, and to wrestle through it in a sci-fi sense and consider the possibilities, the options, and weigh them. But with that in mind, I also understand that the devil and his crew, they're some sneaky bastards. And we could be distracted at the most critical moments, like driving the car and you're distracted by the cell phone. Next thing you look up and bang, there's something stopped in front of you, there's something crossing in front of you, and you're dead. Let's not be playfully distracted at a life and death moment. We are in the middle of a street fight. Act accordingly. And we will get the opportunity to converse on a lot of these things and enjoy it. And have some fun on it, and also, look from a scriptural standpoint, because I know I've got a lot of Christians in the audience here. Paul goes into the city of Ephesus, I believe it was, where they had all of the idols that were carved out of all the various gods that people worshipped, and he found one, and it was an idol to the unknown God. And he used that narrative to explain something about, he's the one that had the encounter with Christ where the scales fell from his eyes. Reptilian, by the way. The scales fell from his eyes, and he had an encounter that changed his entire existence. And he found it in the conversations with people in the city. He actually had a conversation. He actually went to that place where, I would never be seen dead in that. I couldn't have anything to do with those people. Well, he went there to understand how they thought, what they were looking at, what they were building their lives around. And then he helped use those things to help him to have an intelligent conversation and convey things that were truths to him, that he believed he had a divine mandate to express and share and work with. So even in having these conversations, look, let's have a conversation. And there may be things that you'll share stuff. I didn't just wake up with some of these things that are in my mind. I've studied them. I've talked with the people. I've had amazing conversations with people who've gone deep into some of this subject matter, and I find it, energizing, beautiful, interesting, and those conversations have huge value to me across my life. I want to have more of them. And at this exact instant, I believe we're in a street fight where we won't get the luxury of doing those conversations if we don't survive this moment. And we have to act and operate in a certain way that gives us a prayer of being in one piece alive, individually and as a country, to later enjoy those conversations. Is that clicking for you? You get where I'm coming from?
Yes, of course. We could. Everything is just about sharing what we know, and even if there are certain things that we don't align with, we could be respectful and agree to disagree, but still be part of the same fight. And this is where I even told my audience last time that this is where we have to just let go of all the differences. Whether people are not ready to understand the spiritual warfare, the higher dimensions that are involved in this 3D warfare, we are fighting, as you would call, the street fight. But in the end, we're all working together, so Christians alike, I hear Julie Green, who is a Christian prophet, who, talks about this stuff as well. I think we should be in a time where we should all just work together as one team, fight where we're at in our awakening, but understanding that we do have one thing in common, and that is we want disclosure. We want to end the this reptilian rule of the planet. We want to end the Canaanite rule of the planet, whatever you want to call it, right? And restore the Adamic rule once again as it was intended to be. And that, my friend, we could all agree on.
I look forward to further conversations. Ismail, we came together under kind of unusual circumstances. I'm glad we were able to work through that, find out that we are kindred spirits, and I thank you for letting me have access to your audience to at least consider these things, and I hope that they feel like they got something beneficial out of it, a little different for everybody, but um, I appreciate you letting me join you like this and spend some time on this conversation.
Anytime, my friend, anytime. We should definitely do a part two. This was a very interesting conversation. And I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And you are absolutely right. We are the last phase of this street fight. And this is what happens in the next couple of years is going to determine the fate of humanity. And I agree on that. So,
even in the next few months, you
or
aren't
even,
going to
yeah.
believe what you see even over the remainder of this year.
Oh, I know.
I
I
appreciate
big
you.
things are coming. Big things are positive things, I believe. For those that are, of course, aligned with, with righteousness, justice, and transparency. But with that in mind, my friend, let's do a part two and let's talk another time.
Oh, let me do this. Let me say a quick prayer. Father God, I thank you for everyone present here. We all probably do have some different perspectives of your creation, of you yourself, and it is there's lots of illusions. There's lots of scales on all of our eyes in some areas, but you're faithful. You created us for your pleasure. You created us with purpose. I pray that you would reveal yourself to each person in this audience, that those that seek you with a pure heart, that are genuine and wanting to know about your creation, your purposes in having us here, that you're as serious as they are, that you would reveal yourself to people in this audience in a very personal way. And then we ask for divine assistance, guidance, protection, provision as we move into this time of peril that faces America and the world. And we ask you, Father God, to give each person in this audience understanding, light, uh, a word, a scripture in their heart and their mind that they can latch onto to be able to um, work and operate in this threat environment, to survive it, so that we may enjoy the luxury on the far side of these calamities that are seemingly right here at our door, that we would have the luxury to consider spiritual things, to consider histories and relationships and all the wild, bizarre, unusual, beautiful things that you've put out into this universe that we live in, that you would give us the luxury of conversing about these things um, at a moment when we are not in such instant peril, and that for this exact moment you would give us what we need with intelligence, with tools to not only save ourselves, but to be light and to do good within the community around us, whether it's our own family or people we work with or people in our neighborhood, so that we can survive through this, to see righteousness prevail, to see justice, proper balances within the way humans interact with other humans. And if there be, and where there be interference, be it ethereal demonic spirits or entities or other creation in this plane of existence that are interfering with us, that you would give us understanding so we may exercise the authority you gave us through Adam and restored to us through Christ, uh, to be able to retake control of this planet for good and not for evil. Asking all of this in the name of Jesus, by the blood of Christ, make it so. Thank you, Father.
Thank you. That was a beautiful prayer. Thank you for doing that. And
Yeah.
we will see you on another time. And thank you once again, Juan O Savin,
I
for
will
being.
look forward to it. I'll look forward to it. It's a great pleasure to get a chance to talk with somebody that wants to consider these other things and have a fun conversation on a Saturday night out here on the planet. And I look forward to the next time we're able to do it with all of your listeners and with you. Thank you very much, Ismail.
You're welcome, Juan. Have a beautiful evening, my friend.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good night, folks.
All right, everyone. That was Juan O Savin for you. And just like he said, it was a great and wonderful conversation. And I'm sure a lot of you guys could watch this on the replay and, get something in, get some of this information, perhaps some, some, you know what I mean? Like he was able to fill in some gaps in a lot of ways, describing, things from a biblical perspective, which I love to do myself. So in the end, we're all in this together, and we all have one thing in common. Not we're all one, but yes, we're all one, but we also have one thing in common, guys, and that is that we want our planet back from the dark side. And so that's all that should matter at this point. And again, I extend association and collaboration with our conservative Christian community out there who is supporting 45, who is fighting, the good fight, and all the other truthers out there, whether they are flat earthers, round earthers, whether they have different perspectives. At this point, let's come together under one common objective, and that is to reunify the human family. And when the disclosure takes place, then at that point, those that are deeper into the rabbit hole are going to be the ones that are going to be mentors and teachers to those that are not, to those that are just still getting their feet wet when it comes to uncovering all of this information. So with that in mind, I hope you guys have a beautiful evening on a Saturday night, and we will see you guys Monday night for a White Hat Earth Alliance update. This is Ishmael Perez. Don't forget to share this video far and wide, and may the God force be with you all, always.